Hi, everybody. I'm D.Lisa West. I am a dream doula.
Hi, I am Christina Spataro. I am a psychotherapist and relationship coach.
And we are thinking about all those conflicting messages that you get in the world. I was telling
Hmm.
her what I was thinking about today was Reiki, energy healing, prayer partners, blah, 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 blah. So, what are we supposed to be doing? What are we supposed to be believing? How do we balance those conflicting ideas that come into our mind? Because on the one hand, we live in this world where it's go, 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 push energy, go do this, make things happen. And then
Hmm.
there's another part where it's like, no, you don't make things happen. You allow things to happen because your vibration is so high. And we were talking about someone that Christina knows who was raised in a dual religion family. Tell me more about that.
So basically, it was where the father believed one thing and the mother believed another. And the problem was both were very firm in their beliefs, but it completely messed with this person's head because so what am I supposed to believe?
Sure.
Because
And
right,
didn't she then feel like she needed to be aligned or an
yes,
ally to one parent or the other? And if
yes,
she was with
yes.
one, then she was rejecting the other.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm gonna use a movie. Surprise, surprise, surprise. And this is a newer one. It's based on the Judy Blume in the book, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. And even though a huge part of it is dealing with this young girl and her first menstruation. Now, for context, this book was written in the 70s, and the idea that this is not talked about, women's bodies, it's all a mystery. The crazy thing is, even in 2023, there's still things that we're not allowed to talk about. There's still, young girls growing up who are, they can't ask honest questions about what's happening. And even though we have gotten better with these conversations, we're still uncomfortable. So, what do they say? The things we can't talk about: sex, religion, politics. So, we're not going to go deep into that because we certainly don't want to alienate anyone in our audience. But going to say is when you have all these feelings and conflicting messages, and then the implication is you got to be careful who you talk to. Because if you talk to somebody who, for instance, is a strong Catholic, and maybe that's your parent, but then they, are saying, "Oh, no, no, don't talk to me about Reiki or energy. That's against my belief system." But then let's say you have the other relative who's like, "But I believe we're all part of the universe and energy, and this is what we need to do." But then you talk to somebody else who believes this, and you love all these people, so you almost feel like, well, if I don't believe what you believe, does that mean we can't be aligned? Does that mean that we can't be in relationship? And ultimately, what all human beings are looking for: to feel aligned with other people, to feel accepted, to feel loved, to feel understood.
Mm. Yes, and we might say it in this way, to be seen,
Yes, to be seen,
to
to be,
really be seen as who you are
yes,
is such a beautiful gift that we can give people.
yes. I mean, how
Like
many times?
I think if someone says, I see you, I
Yes,
see who you really are,
see who you really are.
that's like, wow.
Yeah.
And you're lovable and you're perfect just the way you are.
Yes. Yes.
So many of
Exactly.
us did. Oh, so many of us did grow up in families where religion was confusing.
Mhm.
Um, how about you? When you grew up, what kind of religion was your family? Or were they
Well,
religious?
this was really interesting. Technically, I was baptized in the Catholic faith because that was traditionally my family background. But neither of my parents were particularly practicing.
Mhm.
It was more like, this is what we did. I feel in many ways I was baptized to appease my grandmother
Mm.
because, I remember when she was alive and she was talking to my sister about whether or not they were going to baptize their child. She was like, well, you have to, like, to protect the child. So, but in terms of, you know, we major holidays, like we celebrated Christmas and Easter, but it wasn't a weekly thing that we did. So it was there, but it wasn't like felt deeply. And then what was interesting was my mom, she had grown up, she'd gone to Catholic school, she'd been really, for want of a better word, indoctrinated into that. But what bothered her was they didn't want you to question anything. And God bless my late mother, she loved to question. The more you told her not to question, the more she was going to question. They, don't you tell me I can't question you. But so she kind of had issues with that, that you were told, no, no, just don't ask questions. That's wrong. And, but she also was a scientist. And so when she would look at nature and science and how everything is such a perfect order down to the most minute molecule and atom, she would say to me, you can't look at the perfection of that and not believe that there isn't something behind it.
Oh, that's exactly what Einstein thought.
Yes, she was a true
Um,
scientist in the tradition of Einstein.
right on. I think it surprised people who followed Einstein in his time that he had a spiritual belief that there was a force behind everything we can visually see and the things that we can't see. And what is that force? Is that force God? Is that force the quantum field? Is that force
Yes,
even something that a human mind can understand?
exactly, exactly.
Oh, wow. So I grew up in a family where my mother was not religious. My father was not either, but he grew up in the Lutheran faith and he was an immigrant. So when he was a kid, it was very important to go to go through the process of becoming confirmed. And I don't really know. I'm sorry for all the listeners who know what that means. I don't really know what that means. I think you take some classes and then you graduate from those classes and then you're confirmed and they have a ceremony. Do they do that in the Catholic Church as well?
Yes, they do. They do that in the
Mm,
Catholic Church as well. So it's a whole thing. Your first step is you're baptized as a baby, and
mm.
then you go through, then as you're older. So each step is like re-cementing, your commitment to God and the church and everything. Now, they did the baptism for me, but I was actually not confirmed.
Yeah, same here, which didn't bother me as a kid. Well, we used to go to Sunday school,
Mhm.
but my parents didn't go to church while we were in Sunday school. They just like
Mhm.
stayed home and hung out with each other and then came back and
Mhm.
got us.
Right.
Uh, and I remember thinking, that's cool, but this is boring. I didn't like Sunday school. I remember asking
Mhm.
one of the women there. And of course, now that I know how things work, it's just like some mom or some person in the church that
Mhm.
said, I'll teach Sunday school. It
Mhm.
wasn't like they taught her anything or she was ordained or she knew anything more than any other regular Joe. So I asked her once, like, who wrote the Bible? Did Jesus write the Bible? Did God write the Bible? I was must have been like 7, 8 years old. And I don't remember the answer she gave me, but I remember thinking it was bogus. So whatever she said back to me, I was like, yeah, I'm out. I was just thinking as a young kid, I'm out of here. I don't like this. She doesn't even know. Maybe she said she didn't know, which would be
That
of
would be an
course
awesome admission.
it would be. Um, but I remember saying, I don't want to go to church anymore. And if I finally broke my leg and I was like, it's so hard to go in and out with crutches. Like, can I stop going to Sunday school? And they're like, fine,
Mhm.
fine, don't go anymore. So as a kid, I grew up thinking, I don't know. Should I be religious? Should I not be religious? Then there was a time in my youth where all my friends were very excited about finding Jesus as their personal savior, and they went on youth
Mm-hmm.
groups, and they went to this exciting church where they danced and sang, and they're like, "You want to
Mm-hmm.
come?" And I'm like, I don't think so. What are you doing? And now as an adult, I see so many different. I remember saying to a friend who went to a Foursquare church,
Mm-hmm.
and I took her to my New Age, New Thought church. We went to each other's churches, and then she said she was really worried about me
Mm-hmm.
because the day I took her to my church, they were talking about a recommitment ceremony for people who were married, and a gay couple stood up. They were both wearing tuxedos and said, "We were married last year, and we're going to be in the ceremony." And I think it freaked her out because I don't think it's
Mm.
okay to be gay in her church, but it was totally
Ah,
fine to be gay in my church. And this was 30
right.
years ago. So,
Wow. That's
you know,
that's amazing.
it was the church you went to if you were gay, the one I did. So, but to have those confusing messages like, should you go to church? Should you not go to church? Should you believe in God? Should you not believe in God?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you grew up believing in the goddess, in some kind of really old fashioned
Mm-hmm.
theory of spirituality. And by the way, you didn't mention the name of that movie.
Oh, so it was, Dear God, Are You There? It's Me, Margaret. And I went off on a tangent about menstruation, but it really is what was really interesting about this character. The mother is Catholic. The mother was raised, I want to say Catholic, and the father was Jewish. And the mother was actually cut off from her family for marrying her father.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Did she convert to Judaism then to marry this guy?
No, because the father, although he was, and if I'm mixing the religions of the parents, please forgive me. What they did was, even though they were from these two backgrounds, neither parent was particularly religious, like neither was one. But what was interesting was Margaret was trying to figure out what her relationship to God was. So throughout the movie, this is what she does. She has these conversations. Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret. And then a thing happens in the movie, spoiler, spoiler, where the estranged mother of Margaret's mother has reappeared and is causing conflict.
Mm,
So now Margaret is having a crisis of faith. So the idea is what, so she very much in the so umbrella of growing up, what it means to have your first period, what do I believe spiritually? She's trying to figure out a whole identity here. And it really, okay, spoiler, spoiler, Margaret figures out what works for her and her way. And I
okay.
think that's what we're supposed to do, figure out what works for us in our own way. Our parents do the best they can with what they know and what they have and what they're from. And I think part of our soul's journey, because I am very spiritual, I do believe in the soul, I do believe in God. I think part of our journey here is to find our path. I remember when I first read, because even when because you have the Catholic faith, but then you have all the Protestant faiths and all that. And for some reason, like even though y'all believe in Jesus, they still don't recognize. Yeah, we are. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's even conflict among that. And I remember when I first read about Martin Luther, and when his whole thing was, prior to him, his writings and his push was that the idea was that the priest was your go-between between you and God, you and Jesus. And Martin Luther felt that everybody should be able to read the Bible and everybody should be able to have their own relationship with God. And out of that grew all the Protestant religions, and they're Protestant because they were protesting the initial Catholic Church. And I remember thinking, that's interesting. I liked that. I liked that you develop your own relationship. And I think this is about us developing our own spiritual relationship. And you have so many cases of people who do end up going along with what their family was, but then you have others who feel they're being led differently. And it's about trusting. I heard someone say once, Everybody's always asking, how do you know what your passion is? How do you know what you're supposed to be doing, what you're supposed to be following? And the idea is, do you feel in alignment? Like, how
Wow.
does this sit with you?
Yeah.
And if you feel in alignment, if it's sitting right with you, if you are truly following your purpose, your heart, what you believe.
Well, and that's part of what I do with my coaching clients is I
Mm-hmm,
ask them to consider their next step
mm-hmm,
and to feel into it. Like, does this feel expansive or does this feel contractive?
yeah.
And if it's an expansive feeling, go do that thing.
Mm-hmm,
And the same thing could be true of where you would like to go worship. Is it a
mm-hmm,
Jewish synagogue? Is it a
mm-hmm.
Catholic church?
Yes.
Um, which my Catholic friends say it's all about the smells and bells
Mm-hmm,
because each, or is it a New Age church? Or there's a church here called the Church of, I think they call it the Church of Nature. And they basically meet outside once a month. You do a meditative walk and you come back together and journal. And then if you want to discuss things, you do. But there's no religion affiliated with it. They're saying that their God they find out in nature.
mm-hmm.
So there's so many ways. And as I said to my Foursquare friend when she was very worried about me, she said, "I'm worried about you, Dee. You're going to this church."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, there are many rivers to the same ocean. I have my way that works for me, and you have your way, and I respect you for, you want to go to that church? Good. You love it? Good. I love mine. I love mine. The way I found this New Age church was so beautiful, and maybe the listeners can relate to this. My daughter was 2, and she was going to be in a lesbian wedding. She was going to
Mm-hmm.
be the flower girl, and
Oh
they had a
wow.
little boy who was going to be the ring bearer. So they had this little boy. A couple days before the wedding, the little boy freaked out and said, "I don't want to bury the rings. I can't bury the rings. I don't want to bury them." And they somehow couldn't explain to him that burying a ring was not burying the ring. And he just refused. And so they said, we pivoted and we said, "Would you like to throw down the flowers?" Yes, he would love to do that. So he was the flower person, and my daughter was the ring bearer. And they were so cute and adorable. They kind of made it to the front of the church, but not really during the ceremony. And the woman who was the minister at this place I'd never been to before, she was funny. We laughed a lot during that. And I thought to myself, this lady's funny. I would come to this church. And then I started going there for 30 years.
Wow.
And the first few times I went, I cried every time I went to the service. Every time. It just touched me so deeply. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. I'm crying again. I would be like wiping my tears while I was singing the last song. And at that point, we would hold hands while we sang the final song. And then I'd be like, my hands are all wet from tears on my face.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, but it was so beautiful and it resonated so much with me that, yeah, it brought me to tears. And I've been in other churches around the world where I would just want to sit in that space. The beautiful cathedrals in Europe. I would just go to that church just to sit inside the sacred space with the beautiful windows and the art on the walls and ceilings. And so some of that's part of the experience too, I think, for people.
Yes, absolutely. Again, it's what is resonating with you.
Right,
You know,
right.
where are you being called to? You know, in both our work, we work with people who are trying to find their path. You
Yes.
know, that's it. They're trying to find their path. And maybe they have had a hard time because of messaging they got when they were younger or now, or self-doubt, you know, faulty beliefs, a difficult mindset, fill in the blank. But they're trying to figure out where they're aligned. And one of the first things we do is ask them, what do you want?
Yeah.
And that might be the first time they were ever asked that.
Right. What do you want or what would you love? Like
Yes,
people don't ask themselves what they would love as much as they ask themselves what they hate about what's going on.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think that's where the work I do and the work you do is so valuable, because we're allowing a momentary stop in the craziness of their world to say, you are allowed to look at this. You
Yeah.
are allowed to see, what do you really like? What do you really want? And you're allowed to go for it.
Yes. So, dear listener, what would you love? And if you're looking for something that would feed your spiritual soul,
Mhm.
maybe it's a church, maybe it's a synagogue, maybe it's the theater of the outdoors, but
Mhm.
whatever it is, there's something here beyond this daytime reality as humans that we can tap into that makes us feel connected to the mystery of life.
Yes, yes.
And I
And to
hope you go and find it.
find your bliss, dear listener, and know that if you'd like help on this journey, we are here to support you.
Right on. Thank you for another interesting conversation, Christine. I really appreciate you.
And I really appreciate you. Thank you.
All right.